Hi everyone. So today we are starting a new unit in our listening and learning curriculum, and it's going to be all about kings and queens. So just like we have a teacher in our classroom, they're kind of like the leader of the classroom. We also have a president that's the leader of our country in the United States. Well, some countries have kings and queens as their leaders. What makes a king and a queen different is that they're actually born into royalty or royal families. So they really don't have a choice of being a king or a queen versus a president who chooses to run for the office and he's voted in and elected by the people. Kings and queens are already born into that position or in their royal family. A king is a man from a royal family, and a queen is a woman from a royal family. And their children are called princes and princesses, and they will grow up to be one day to be kings and queens. And kings and queens and their royal families live quite differently than other people do. So we know that we live in the United States, but there are many different countries in the world that are ruled by kings and queens. And a lot of them are specifically in France and England. And so today we're going to listen to just an introduction of what kings and queens do, what they dress like, what they wear, kind of like where they live. So let's get into our story. Look at this fancy building. Can you believe that this was actually someone's home? Well, it's not just any home. It's a palace. This palace used to belong to a queen in France. What do you think it's like inside? It must be nice if it were built for a queen. In fact, this palace has 440 rooms inside. As the leaders of their countries, kings and queens often have the biggest and best homes in the land, known as palaces or castles. As the leader, the queen or king rules a particular area of land and the people who live there. This area of land is called a kingdom. There used to be many, many kingdoms in the world. Today, however, there are not as many kingdoms or kings and queens as there used to be. It's good to be king. That's an old saying, and if you look at this king, whose name was King Richard II of England, you begin to get the idea of why this saying holds true. If you walked into a palace in England 300 years ago and saw this person, you wouldn't have any trouble guessing he was a king. As the most important and powerful person in their kingdoms, kings and queens always got the best of everything: the best houses, the best clothing, and the best food. Kings did not have to say please and thank you. They didn't even have to dress themselves. They had servants to do that for them. Pretty much everything a king or queen used, touched, or owned was called royal. The soft, fluffy robes King Richard II wore were the royal robes. The cup he drank from was called the royal cup. And if it was royal, that meant that only the king or queen or someone in the royal family, such as their daughter, who was the princess, or their son, who was the prince, was allowed to use it. King Richard II is holding two things in this picture. In one hand, he's holding a royal orb, and in the other hand, he's holding a royal scepter. These were ceremonial objects, or things that the king wore or held just to remind people of who was in charge. The hat he's wearing is called a crown, which is no ordinary hat. Crowns are usually made out of some kind of precious metal like gold or silver and decorated with fancy jewels like rubies and emerald and sapphire. These jewels were called the crown jewels. Like the scepter and the orb, the crown was an important symbol of the king's power. Here's a close-up picture of a crown. It's made of gold and loaded with fancy pearls and other jewelry. A hat like this would not be good for keeping the sun out of your eyes, and it wouldn't be very good for keeping your head warm. But if you were wearing it, it meant that you were king or queen and the ruler of the kingdom. A few hundred years ago, it would have been nice to be king or queen ruling your very own kingdom, making all the rules and laws that people had to follow. But it would be very, very difficult. Kings and queens had big responsibilities. Every day people came to them to ask for money or advice, and every day they had to make important decisions about things that were happening in the kingdom. A famous king named Charlemagne was so important that an artist made a stained glass window with his image. Look at his fancy chair. The king's chair is called a throne, and as you might imagine, only the king is allowed to sit there. His throne was raised up on a platform so he would appear tall and important even when he was sitting down. What's that in his hand? Charlemagne is holding a sword and an orb to remind people that he is king. Over the next couple weeks, we'll learn more about kings, queens, and kingdoms, and everything having to do with royalty. So here are comprehension questions at the end. You can write down the answers to these questions. You can also record yourself. Sorry, so here are comprehension questions to discuss. What is a king? What does a king do? What is a queen? What does a queen do? What is a kingdom? What is a palace? What do kings and queens wear? Are there still kings and queens today? Sorry, so here are comprehension questions to discuss. What is a king? What does a king do? What is a queen? What does a queen do? What is a kingdom? What is a palace? What do kings and queens wear? Are there still kings and queens today?